Every April, the NFL Draft determines the future. Teams invest in young players, develop them over time, and hope that a year or two down the road, those players become the foundations of something great. But what if your team is already good enough today, but questions hang over the years that follow? In today's NFL, championship windows don't stay open forever. Contracts stack up, young stars get paid, and eventually, every team faces the same reality: you can't keep everyone. At some point, you have to replace expensive talent with players on rookie deals or risk watching the roster fall apart. And in Seattle, that moment may be closer than we think. Jackson Smith-Njigba just got paid. Devin Witherspoon will be next. And not far behind, Byron Murphy, AJ Barner, and others will be in line for extensions. This team is about to get expensive. This means that over the next few seasons, the Seahawks are going to need an influx of cheap young contributors to stay competitive. Now, most rookies don't become stars in year one, they take a step in year two. So in many ways, every draft class isn't just about this season, it's about the next one. So what if instead of building that future 1 year at a time, you brought it forward? What if you drafted a full wave of talent that spends most of 2026 learning and developing, and then rises together in 2027? Sometimes building for the future means being patient, but sometimes it means deciding the window is now. All right, welcome back to the 12's War Room. If episode 8 was about setting up future draft capital, tonight is about bringing that draft capital forward. In our last episode, we explored what it would look like if the Seahawks prioritized the 2027 draft, trading down this year, building a war chest, and setting themselves up for a very strong class next year. But tonight, we're flipping that idea completely. Instead of accumulating future draft picks, we're going to spend them, all of them. Now, to be clear, no front office would ever trade away an entire draft class. That's just not realistic. This is really just for fun as an experiment. So what happens if you compress 2 draft cycles into one? Because the reality is the Seahawks are entering a very specific and difficult phase as a Super Bowl winning roster. The team is good enough to compete right now. We've seen that in how they've approached free agency. But the real challenge isn't just 2026. It's what happens after that that is in question. The core of this roster is about to get very expensive. We just saw Jackson Smith-Njigba get a massive record-breaking extension. Devin Witherspoon, by all accounts, will probably be next and would also probably get a record-breaking extension. Not far behind him, you've got players like Byron Murphy and AJ Barner, perhaps Zach Charbonnet. All those guys will also be in line for potential extensions next year, which means over the next couple of seasons, Seattle is going to need a large number of cheap, controllable players to keep this roster intact. This is where the idea starts to make a little sense because most rookies don't really break out in year one. Usually it takes them until year 2 to really start showing their potential, kind of like with JSN. So we're not doing this experiment thinking that this is what's going to get us to a Super Bowl this year, although it would help. We're looking at future years once we can no longer afford to bring back some of our major contributors. So really when an NFL team is drafting, they're not just drafting for this year's needs like everyone in the media always seems to think. They're drafting for 2, sometimes maybe 3 years out. So what if instead of spreading that future building over multiple years, you built that second year breakout group all at once right now? A full class of players who can contribute, like I said, in this year, but then that rise together in 2027 just when we need them the most. Think of it as a roster building wave. Instead of layering talent little by little year over year, you create a single class that develops together, peaks together, and fills the exact window where your roster becomes the most expensive. Obviously, there's risk in this approach, which is why it's never been and never probably will be done. But if it were to happen, and if you hit on your picks, you will have built the next young core of your roster in one shot. So that's the mission tonight. We're going to trade away our 2027 draft capital completely and use it to move around the board, trading up, trading down, acquiring more picks, and stacking as much talent as we can into a single draft class. The goal is to come away with a large, high-impact draft class that can contribute immediately and then take a major step forward in year 2. Now, there's one important constraint. Even if we acquire more picks, we can't just draft endlessly. We can't come out of this with 15 players that we draft. We'd end up cutting some of them, right? Because this roster is already pretty much full. Seattle brought back most of its own free agents, which means there are only so many spots available. So realistically, we're targeting a class of between 7 to 9 solid players, enough to create impact, but not so much that you're forced to cut some of them or expose them to waivers by putting them on the practice squad or our ready squad. Now, before we get into the board, we need to expand how we're thinking about roster needs, because tonight we're not just drafting for this year. We're drafting for this year and next year, which means that we're drafting for roster holes that don't even exist yet, but are coming. If you look ahead to 2027, there are a number of players currently set to hit free agency. On the offensive side, you've got names like Zach Charbonnet, Anthony Bradford, Olu Oluwatimi, and potentially others, depending on how things play out. On defense, you're looking at players like Uchenna Nwosu, Derek Hall, and multiple rotational pieces across the defensive front and in the secondary. Then even further out, you've got, like I said earlier, Byron Murphy, who I think we definitely want to extend, but after massive JSN and probably Witherspoon extensions, I honestly don't know if they'll have the money to do all that. Then you layer in potential cap situations, decisions that will need to be made, veteran contracts like Cooper Kupp, Julian Love, Jaron Reed, DeMarcus Lawrence, and others. They all present scenarios where the Seahawks could create meaningful cap savings by moving on from them after this year. So when you combine expiring contracts with potential cap moves, you start to see the real picture. This roster is likely to lose both top-end contributors and key depth pieces 12 months from now. So if we thought this free agency was a little painful, wait till next year. It's going to be more painful. So our mission is to fill those holes now with guys that will be ready to step up next year and keep this team competing for Super Bowls. So from a roster need standpoint, every position is on the table. I would say that defensive line is probably the top priority. So we're not going to ignore any position, but that'll be one that I definitely think we need to come away with at some point. So rather than letting the board fall to us, tonight we're going to take the fight to the board. Aggressive moves, strategic trades, and a completely different way of thinking about roster construction. All right, let's reset the board and see what happens when you go all in. We are pushing all of our chips to the middle of the table. Let's do this. Okay, we are ready to jump into our mock draft. The first thing that we're going to do is one of our setup trades. We're going to trade away our first round pick next year, and we're going to try to get a good middle round pick this year. We'll start with the Lions, see if they're willing to do that with us, and they are. So we're sitting here now at pick 17. There's some awesome players here, but because this pick is going to be our strongest asset in order to build draft capital, to build up a good solid class, remember, we're not just drafting for this coming year, we're drafting for 2 years out. So this needs to be a big class, not just quality, but quantity. I'm going to try to get both, but that probably means looking at a lot of second and third rounders, not just one good first rounder and a bunch of fourth rounders or something like that. So let's see what we can do to turn this pick into more picks. I am also going to do our next setup trade, which is I'm going to get rid of all my future draft capital. Steelers look like they're willing to trade with us, so let's see what we can do. Keep it above 50%. See if they take it. Okay, they did. So we've done both of our setup trades. Now any trade going forward is going to count against my 3 trade maximum, but we have already built up for ourselves a total of 8 picks. So we are in pretty good shape. I would think that I'd like to trade some of these late round ones into earlier round ones, so don't be surprised if I do that in these next 3 trades that I do. We're going to see what we can get. We're going to move back another 2 spots. I'd love to get pick 54 and then see what we can do. Okay, we were able to do a lot of pick swapping and improve our draft position quite a bit, I think. So we're good with that. We've got one more trade that we can do. It's amazing that Vega Awane is still here. Got to be the best guard in the draft, I think. Got 1 trade left, but it is not very appealing. We have 9 picks. I still have one of these late rounders that I'd like to move on from, but this doesn't look like a great place to trade right now. So maybe it's time to grab a player. And I think Awane is a definite first round talent here. We're gonna need a guard, either to compete with Anthony Bradford this year, or love him or hate him, he's gonna be a free agent at the end of this year. So we could use someone right now to at least develop and be ready to step into that role. So we're gonna go with Vega. Now we're going to go down to our original pick at 32. I do like what I see available to us. We've got Zion Young. We also have TJ Parker at the edge. We've got a couple options for defensive tackle, which is not a position that I've talked about much in my previous mock drafts. This is not a position that I think we need in 2026, but if you think about Byron Murphy, it took him until his second year until he really started to make an impact. And so this would be a good year to draft a defensive tackle and then let them be ready to step into a starting role next year. In particular, because next year, guys, may be the last year for Leo Williams. It probably will be the last year for Jaron Reed. So we really want to get one of these high-ranked defensive tackles here. At pick 32, this might be our last chance to do that. There's a chance that we could go back to 40, but I don't know that I love that. We're going to propose an earlier trade and see if we can't move back enough without risking losing one of those players. Okay, we were able to do some pick swapping with the Houston Texans. Again, improved our capital quite a bit here. We're going to cross our fingers and hope that both Miller and Hunter don't come off the board. I'd be happy with either one of them. Okay, wonderful. So Lee Hunter is still here. Again, we already have Vega Ioane at guard, and so now we're going to go with more beef up in the middle, this time on the defensive side. So Lee Hunter at pick 38. Now we're going to drop down. We're going to have a bunch in the 50s, and so we're going to have some good opportunities to get some more players here that we really like. It's time to kind of unleash hell. We're going to have 3 of the next 5 or 6 picks, so I'm going to have my choice of some guys here. I think Keontae Scott is the best of this group at this point in the draft. I think he's going to be a good option at safety for us, and so we're going with him at pick 53, and then we're going to go right back on the board at 54. This would be a good opportunity to get Jadarian Price. If I hadn't already gotten a guard, I would be taking a very strong look at Jennings Dunker. I'm really just not interested in Ty Simpson or really any quarterback at this point in time. I know Drew Lock is going to be a free agent after the end of this year. I'm not sure if Jalen Milroe is ready to step into the full-time backup QB role, but really at the end of the day, I just don't want to have 4 quarterbacks that I have to manage on my roster. So we're skipping quarterback altogether. From a cornerback standpoint, I do think I actually kind of like Igbinosun a little bit better than Keith Abney. I know that's debatable, but I would rather go ahead and grab Jadarian Price at this point. We do need a running back, and I think he's a very strong one, second best running back in the class. Now, I think that this is a great chance for us to grab an edge rusher. We have several really good ones here. We've got Derek Moore, we've got Danita Sutton. There is a bit of a drop-off, I think, from this point on to the rest of the draft, and so I'd like to grab one of those guys. I think I'm going to go with Derek Moore. I really like what I see from him all around. Very productive. I like his awareness in the pass game. 3 batted balls in the year. That's really good, along with a good running game, and very productive. You're talking 41 total pressures, 11 sacks. So it looks good to me. We're going with Derek Moore here at 59. We're going to be back on the clock in just a second at 69. Now we could double up and grab Dennis Sutton here if we wanted another edge rusher. I do think that I'm going to go with Igbinosun at cornerback here out of Ohio State. Again, another very well-rounded corner. And again, there's a bit of a drop-off in corner after him, so we're going to draft Igbinosun at 69. And we're starting to round out a pretty good class here. We've got the line of scrimmage pretty well covered. We've also got our secondary pretty well covered. We're good in the running back spot. I'd still love to come out of this draft with a receiver, potentially a linebacker, and I think center is a good position for us to look at. And since the spot has opened up here, I noticed that one of my favorite centers in this draft, Logan Jones, is sitting right there for me at pick 98. I don't think that I'm going to find anybody after him that I'm willing to reach up and grab, and so I think this is a bit of no-brainer for me, so we're going to go with Logan Jones at pick number 98. So now you could say our defensive line is pretty well set, and our offensive line is pretty well set as well. We have 2 remaining picks. Again, receiver, tight end, linebacker, those would be my preferred spots, but again, we're not drafting for position need here. We're trying to just come up with the best players that we can come away with. This could be a good spot for CJ Daniels, wide receiver out of Miami. Very good player, 6'2", so a decent size. Plays primarily on the outside, but can also move into the slot when needed. Very productive college career, so that could be an option for us. One of my favorite players. I know that he is not highly rated in PFF, but I think he is going to be a very good player in the NFL. He's just kind of got that dog in him, so I like Jalen Kilgore. If we wanted to double up at guard, we've got Bo Stevens. We also have Eric McAllister. If we were going to look at a receiver, a little taller, 6'3", a very productive career for TCU. And then Jacoby Lane, who I've looked at in previous drafts, even taller wide receiver out of USC. Not quite as productive, but still a very good receiver in a good season. We could double up at running back with Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska, who I've picked up in previous mock drafts as well. And we could look at doubling up at edge. We've got Mason Riger, and I think a little bit later, Ndamukong Tucker. So there's some good options here. It's just a matter of choosing which one. This is a tough choice. Now, I think we've done well enough in this draft to cover a wide variety of different positions and some of need now and some of need next year. I think we've awarded ourselves a little opportunity to pick who we think is the best player, even if that means that we've already got somebody. I just like Jalen Kilgore. It's not just because he went to the same school as Nicky Manwari. It's not because I think he's got a little bit of that Nicky Manwari juice to him, but I think that this is a good position for us, kind of a hybrid corner, slot, and safety kind of guy that Mike McDonald can move around the chessboard as he wishes, similar to Keontae Scott. So we're talking about serious flexibility in our secondary, and I think we're going to go with Kilgore here at 121. Now, if we're lucky, maybe one of those receivers will fall to us at 141, but if not, we'll look elsewhere. Okay, no, we did just miss out on those receivers that I had mentioned, so it looks like those are no longer an option. We have a couple options at tight end right here at the top. Jack Endry's out of Texas, a good blocking tight end. Not super productive in the receiving game, but frankly, neither was A.J. Barner coming out of college, so that could be an option. Speaking of A.J. Barner, his old alma mater, Marlon Klein, plays there at Michigan as well. Does not have the greatest of PFF grades, not that that's everything. Some would argue that it's meaningless, but we're going to keep looking down and see who else is here. A position that I continue to be concerned with is our edge rusher spot. We know we lost Boye Mafe. We haven't extended Derek Hall yet, and with our cap situation now, we've extended other players. I don't know if we'll be extending him or not. We also have probably DeMarcus Lawrence coming up on his last year, and we have Uchenna Nwosu, who may or may not play for us even this year with his cap situation. So I think edge is a big one, and I think Nadame Tucker, I think this spot in the draft is a good time to take a flyer on a guy. This is a very productive edge rusher out of a much smaller school, but he has a lot of the measurables that could make him a very viable option in the NFL. So we're going to go ahead and double up at edge and grab Tucker with our final pick. What we'll then do is we'll fast forward all the way to the end. We'll get PFF to grade us and see where that goes, and then we'll do our own evaluation here in just a second. We were able to come away with 9 players, 1 bona fide first rounder, I think 4 if not 5 second round players, and then a couple of third round players in my book. So I think that we did pretty well. PFF mostly agrees with this. They think that we reached on a couple, but I'm okay with what they think. Let's head back over to the war room and do our own analysis and evaluation and see how we did. We are back now, ready to evaluate our draft results. Again, in order to evaluate this draft, we need to remember that we traded away our entire 2027 draft class. So we need to keep that lens on as we examine it. In our previous mock drafts, I would flash up the players that we lost in free agency this offseason and then show what we did in order to fill those roster holes. But because we're looking at this from a 2-year time frame, there are a lot more wild cards out there and potential gaps on our roster. So we're just going to look at position groups and grade what we did, if anything, within each group. Let's begin on the offensive side of the ball, and specifically, let's start up front with the offensive line. There's a chance after this year that Anthony Bradford could walk in free agency, and Jalen Sundell will also be a free agent, and we may decide that we want to upgrade one or both of those positions anyway. So in this draft, we got Vega Awane at guard and Logan Jones at center. We're going to give ourselves an A- for this. We got the best guard in this draft, and I believe one of the better centers in this draft. Remember, even Oluwatimi is going to be a free agent as well. So maybe Sundell takes another step forward this year and solidifies himself as our long-term center, in which case Logan Jones would be a great backup option if we lose Oluwatimi. So I think we're good on the O-line. Staying on offense, we skipped quarterback. I don't want to carry 4 quarterbacks on the roster, so we're not giving a grade there. But we also skipped tight end. I would have liked to come away with a tight end to compete with Saubert and Russell. I'm counting on Elijah Arroyo to stay healthy and hopefully take a big step forward this year and next. So we're in okay shape there, but we're going to give ourselves a C since we didn't get anything. Where I am a little concerned is at wide receiver. I would think that this year is Cooper Kupp's final year as a Seattle Seahawk, and he leaves pretty big shoes to fill. We hope to benefit from a full year of Rashid Shaheed and Torrey Horton, both of the next 2 years. But I would have liked to come away with a receiver to learn behind Kupp and be ready to join the fray next year. We weren't able to do that, so we're going with a D at wide receiver. At running back, we came away with who I believe is the second best running back in this year's class, and it came with our 4th pick, so we really didn't even have to reach for it. That's about as good as we're going to be able to do, so A there. That should help bridge the Charbonnet injury and hopefully fill a little bit the Kenneth Walker vacancy. Switching over to the defensive side of the ball, again, starting up front, we went fairly heavy here with 3 total players on the defensive line, Hunter at defensive tackle, Moore and Tucker at edge. This is to counterbalance the probable losses of Nwosu, Lawrence, Reed, and potentially, although hopefully not, Leonard Williams. I'm going to give us a B+ here. We did not come away with any linebackers here. That could get a little interesting. Ernest Jones, Tyrese Knight, and Drake Thomas are now all lined up to be free agents after next year. It would have been nice to have at least one linebacker to sit and learn and be ready. So we're taking a chance there, but not having anybody in this draft. So we're going to give ourselves a D. Lastly, in the secondary, we came away with 3 players here that I'm pretty excited about. We know we lost Woolen and Bryant. Julian Love has a big cap hit next year. Okada won't come nearly as cheap as he did this offseason. So I think volume was important here. But again, I think we got some good ones. Igbinosun maybe doesn't have superstar written all over him, but I look at him with maybe a similar ceiling as a Josh Jobe. A solid contributor on the outside, allowing Witherspoon to roam freely. And then 2 other guys, Keontae Scott and Jalen Kilgore, who will roam freely, I think, between safety spots or the slot or even the box. So I love the flexibility of this group. We're going with a B+ for the secondary. All in all, we're going to give ourselves an overall B grade for this draft, even though I think we came away with a great group of players, and I'd love to see how they all develop and form together kind of that new young core of the team in a couple of years. 2 major questions remain. Who are you going to cut on the current roster to stay within the 53-man roster to keep all these guys? And maybe even more importantly, who are you missing out on in next year's draft? Those 2 questions alone explain why this type of strategy just wouldn't make any sense, but it was fun to explore as a hypothetical scenario. That's all for today. Let me know what you think, and thanks again for joining us in the 12's War Room.